Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We have need for the National Action Plan for a while. We've also seen enforcement of the National Action Plan for countering radicalization, terrorism, use of religion for political gain. We'll be talking about, of course, these very real issues and the combined effort as far as the state of Pakistan is concerned, the government of Pakistan is concerned, to counter this kind of terrorism. When we talk about radicalization, when we talk about extremism in all shapes and forms. We've also recently seen our police forces, our men fighting valiantly and losing, 12 men having lost their lives in the area of Rahim Yar Khan. We'll be talking about the terrorism overall and the combined efforts that are underway to counter this terrorism all over Pakistan. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Tughral Yamin, who's a senior analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have Syed Muhammad Ali, who's a senior analyst, and a little later on we'll have more guests. Let me go to Syed Muhammad Ali and then I'll come to the studio here. Syed Muhammad Ali, there's also, we know that this is an issue, and we know that the state of Pakistan is taking all steps and measures to deal with this kind of radicalization, this kind of terrorism that has, infiltrated, unfortunately, into Pakistan. How do you look at this recent, of course, we've also seen this recent attempt, and we've also seen our men, brave sons of Pakistani soil, lose their lives. How do you look at this, and how do you look at the attempts that are underway to curb terrorism overall? And of course, the different forms of terrorism, we'll be talking about those in some detail also.
Okay, thank you for a very comprehensive question and the opportunity to join my former teacher, Brigadier Dr. Tughral Yamin, on the show. And I think it's a great honor. I think three aspects of your question. Types of terrorism. I think primarily there are two types of terrorism. One is ethnocentric, and the second is based on distortion of Islamic ideology, in which case you see outfits like TTP, Daesh, and Al-Qaeda, at different levels of success or failures. In case of the ethnocentric terrorism that you see in Balochistan, primarily led by BLA and BLF, and unfortunately both have a similarity that they are being sponsored, supported by India, but they are operating and they are getting logistical and administrative support from Afghan territory. So that is the two types of terrorism that we are facing. But obviously, one good sign is that in the recent couple of years, we have seen a better civil-military cooperation and coordination between at the highest level. We've seen the military leadership and the political leadership being on the same page, despite the fact that the former government of PDI tried to, give them time and space, which they exploited in order to retrench themselves and consolidate their gains, which is why we are trying to defeat them decisively with a much heavier cost and casualties that we keep on witnessing these days. But what is needed, very briefly, I think our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies and military cannot be appreciated enough for their commitment and consistent approach to decisively defeat terrorism throughout the country. However, they need very substantive support to address and eradicate the causes which lead to breeding and growth of terrorism. And that is the ideological factor, the economic factor, and the information domain. In the ideological factor, as Army Chief Sayyid Munir mentioned, the role of ulama is critical in order to explain and convince before the entire Pakistani nation that distortion of Islam for some ulterior motive and promotion and justification of terrorism is not acceptable. And that is a message that must go out across all madaris, all seminaries, across all schools of thoughts. In terms of the
Let me come back to you on that. Dr. Tughral, you heard, I think Syed Muhammad Ali has summed it, up very sufficiently when he talks about ideological, economic. There are different forms of it. Let's talk about ideological terror. Of course, in a sense, it is, one can say the most harmful, because it is where all the terrorism takes root, and of course it harms the society on the very basic level. Dealing with that, how well do you think we are doing? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the role. Let's be candid in this. Of course, we do know that we have made attempts. There has been effort also, but is it sufficient? Are we going down the road where we expect perhaps another 5-10 years even to eradicate this kind of terrorism sufficiently?
I think only half-hearted attempts have been made.
Okay.
The National Action Plan, the 20-point National Action Plan, which came into being because of the horrific incident that took place in APS Peshawar in 2014, was not implemented in letter and spirit. I was just reading it before coming over here, there are several clauses which still need to be implemented. For example, hate speech still goes on. Social media is rife with the hate speech.
Yes.
We know how people
it's
have been
used.
How it has been used to polarize the society. There are references to choking the communication networks, the monitoring networks. It still goes on. The militant organizations are still getting money, and that is why they are so active in KP and Balochistan. And also we have seen this incident on the border of Punjab and Sindh, where the policemen were killed, 12 of them by dacoits. So ideologically, I think a lot more has to be done. And the problem now, what we see is, when the government wanted to do this Azm-e-Istehkam, there was resistance from KP. They said, no, you are not going to do it. And as a matter of fact, the government had to step back and say, okay, this is not an operation. It's a reinvigorated National Action Plan. It's a vision, Azm-e-Istehkam. And it took them a lot of convincing to do that. This is essential because we are losing our young men every day. So yes, rightly pointed out by Syed Muhammad Ali.
And when we talk about those, I mean, we can't not, those 12 men
we can't,
who lost their lives yesterday.
Absolutely.
It is a harrowing incident. It is, men in the line of duty.
Absolutely. So they were probably criminals, but the rest of terrorism is supported by a narrative which is built up on a false premise that these people who are fighting against the states are probably mujahideen, which they are not.
Which they are not.
So a lot more has to be done to bring back the narrative and to convince the people that hey, what they are doing with the support of, as he mentioned, external agencies like RAW or using Afghan soil and other hostile agencies.
Let me come back to you on that note.
Yeah,
we also have with us Javed Jadoon Khan, who's a senior journalist. Javed Sab, can you hear me?
Yes, sure I can, Mahrukh.
Javed Sab, there is, we've just been talking, I hope that you heard Dr. Tughral here, and I think he's very, the way he spoke about the role of the KP province with regard to, we've seen Azm-e-Istehkam. Would you say that this is also politics being used to deal with a national issue, which is extremely important for us as a nation, and which is extremely important and goes to the root of the conception of our society, and the way that if it's not dealt with as soon as possible, the damage it is wreaking and it has wrought is something that will take generations to compensate.
Thank you very much, Mahrukh. I think as per the National Action Plan, Mahrukh, is not only KP. Every provincial government is responsible to augment and to strengthen the anti-terrorism operations, because it is the sole responsibility of the law enforcement agencies as far as the province is concerned. Of course, the federal government is going to provide the lead to fight and combat terrorist activities, particularly those emanating from Afghanistan. That is the responsibility of the armed forces of Pakistan. So I think the problem lies with the lack of resources, maybe, one of the reasons, so lack of will, capacity. Second reason, of course, National Action Plan does provide as far as KP is concerned, because KP is at the forefront of the war on terrorism, more than it should be.
But would you say that politics is being used here to deal with an issue in an inorganic manner, to deal with an issue to perhaps play politics on, because this is not an issue on which politics can be played or should be played, certainly.
That is the important point you just raised, because as far as the fight against terrorism is concerned, it is the whole government's approach. It is the approach of the state of Pakistan. It doesn't belong to any one political party, particular political party, or the provincial government. Fighting terrorism is the policy of the state of Pakistan. Because we know that if you put the feature,
I think there's a problem with audio. Let us try to reconnect again. Let me go to Syed Muhammad Ali. Syed Muhammad Ali, is it as far as this issue is concerned, then let's look at it another way. Do you think all provinces are on one page? Do you think that political parties very often, there are times, and one particular political party, certainly one can say, there is the difference of opinion is used in a manner in which perhaps it's damaging to the whole narrative of extremism, of terrorism, of radicalization?
I think there is no question or two opinions about the fact that all provinces must be equally committed towards decisively and completely eliminating terrorism from Pakistan. But unfortunately, it is a grave irony that the province, which was the frontline province in the last 45 years, facing the brunt of terrorism and leading the charge and the pushback against terrorism, has suffered the most, is perhaps the most neglected in terms of its provincial government's commitment and resolve towards equipping its law enforcement agencies, training them, giving them the wherewithal, and also supporting the counterterrorism department, establishing the counterterrorism courts, anti-terrorist courts, and then perhaps also rehabilitating those who are affected by terrorism. So if you look at the facts, there are counterterrorism departments established in Punjab, in Sindh, Balochistan. But it is very unfortunate that KPK has suffered from terrorism the most, but it has the least number of counterterrorism personnel. It has the least number of anti-terrorist courts, and unfortunately, it also has the least number of people who are being tried before these courts, which is very unfortunate reflection of a limited commitment towards the cause of eradicating terrorism from the political party which is ruling KPK. And that is something which is very unfortunate. And I think the federal government, army, and leading thinkers are trying to convince the provincial government of KPK that it is in its own interest that it eradicates terrorism, it establishes more anti-terrorist courts, it spends more than 584 billion rupees allocated to the development and improvement of counterterrorism department of KPK, so that not only it can work more effectively, but eliminate terrorists and terrorism more substantively from its territory, and not do politics
on it. Exactly, not do. I think on that note, Dr. Tughral, as far as political parties are concerned, that is one side of it. Unfortunately, we also have a problematic situation with regard to our neighbor. If we talk about Afghanistan, the infiltration of terrorism from that border, and initially, of course, we've seen the Afghan Taliban, the government. How do to what do you attribute it? Is it because for a while we've been giving them a lot of room because of their own internal situation? We know the Americans left, and then of course there's a situation of the not the Afghan government, but the Afghani people has been, Pakistan has been really sympathetic to it. But now, for us to have the kind of policy we have at this present time, of course, and keeping our own soil safe from that kind of terrorism is, of course, our utmost and foremost concern, as it should be.
You're absolutely right. The Qatar peace process, in which was attended by the Afghan Taliban themselves, Mullah Brother was the first person who went there. It was agreed upon that the Afghans would not allow their soil to be used for
exactly.
any attacks on their neighboring country. But unfortunately, the Afghan Taliban considered our addition of Taliban. Our government has stopped calling them Taliban. They said they've called them, let's call them Fitnatul Khawarij or something like that, which means these people are actually spreading chaos and anarchy. So they feel beholden to them. They consider it their moral duty to support them. They do not listen to Pakistan. They're being provided proofs that these people are operating from your territory, but still they turn a blind eye, or perhaps they don't have a writ over their own territory. That is also a problem. Perhaps they are weak. But we see that not only the insurgents or militants along our border are creating problems for us. Even the Afghan security forces are engaging in artillery bombardment, mortar bombardment along our border. So this is in very bad faith. As you yourself mentioned, Pakistan has been most generous with Afghans. Even now, we did not continue with expelling them or returning them to Afghanistan. Foreign governments have been asking us to delay it because eventually these people who came to Pakistan in the aftermath of the fall of Kabul in 2021 were promised visas in United States of America, in the UK, in other Western countries. So Pakistan said, okay, right, we will not push them back. So Pakistan has been helpful not only to the Afghan government, Pakistan has been helpful to other people, other governments also, not forcing the issue. So really, the Afghans should be more accommodative. They are not being accommodative; they are being stubborn, and it has been said on many forums that why only Pakistan?
Why only Pakistan?
Why not with Iran, or why not with Uzbekistan, which borders them? Why Pakistan? We've been your friend always. So
but do you think it's because of India to an extent?
I think absolutely. India always, the policy of India is my enemy's enemy is my friend.
Right.
So they've always been following this policy. So
on that note, we have to take a short break, after which we'll come back and talk about the infiltration of terrorism. We'll also particularly talk about radicalization and what steps we can take as a society to counter that kind of terrorism. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We have with us Dr. Tughral Yamin. We were talking about how to curb terrorism, particularly radicalization. Before I go to Javed Saab, Dr. Saab, there is, we were talking about this as far as FATF is concerned, as far as measures which will, choke terrorism, because of course resources and funds are at the heart of it.
Absolutely.
Are we, going towards those measures? They are very much a part of our National Action Plan originally.
Absolutely.
Do you think that perhaps those need to be, enforced more stringently?
Absolutely. Money is being pumped in like anything, and that is why you see an uptick in terrorism in our former tribal areas, now the tribal districts. So you have to drain the swamp from the money that is coming in from various areas. Money is coming in, weapons are coming in, and messages of hate are coming in. So these are all part of the National Action Plan, and that is why we need a reinvigorated National Action Plan. There was a lot of equivocation over the years. We did not implement it or enforce it the way we should have been done. And money, communication, social media, the resurgence of militant groups, it's stated there. It should not be allowed to happen.
Javed sir, what about social media, the way that it is used in trying to, of course, give out a false information, trying to further a narrative that is damaging, of course, to all strata of society which promotes this kind of radicalization. How do we come down on this? Because of course it's about balancing, it's about freedom of speech, but also it's about coming down and curbing a narrative that is festering or creating this kind of radicalization also.
Mahrukh, when we talk about backlash narratives, and I think we need to understand that when we talk about the disinformation, misinformation, and the fake news being spread on the social media platforms with the ongoing fight against terrorism, then I think what we lack is we don't have the very effective counter narratives as far as the federal government is concerned and the four provincial governments are concerned, until and unless we accept our weaknesses. Because given the situation, you really can't control the social media platforms. It is the unbridled liberty and freedom people exercise over there. Very few responsible people are present on the social media platforms. Most of the people either reliant with one political party or the other political party, with one vested interest group or the other vested interest group. I mean, half-baked theories are being spread and populated on the social media platforms. What I would like to suggest is there has to be a very concerted, cohesive, and well-planned strategy on part of the federal government. I mean, and most importantly is Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which has to come forward and take the leading role and create narratives. You don't go on forever creating counter narratives, because in today's information battles, you have to create narratives, not only the counter narratives. So the narrative is the state of Pakistan. If it is threatened by the terrorists, then the whole nation, 250 million people, all the four provinces, the federal government, of course, this is going to be the response as far as the state of Pakistan is concerned. Can we afford to have terrorists in our midst? Can we allow the terrorist crossover from Afghanistan, infiltrate into Pakistan, go to our major cities and hit the targets, the populated targets as well? I mean, as far as the ideological you were talking about narratives are concerned, the terrorists, the disinformation, misinformation they're spreading, why are we lacking on that particular front? Why are we unable to create the narratives which become effective? As far as the Americans' counterinsurgency strategy was concerned in Afghanistan, I believe that to change the hearts and minds of the people, you have to win the hearts and minds of the people. So they're very fringe elements, not a the people in KP, Pakistan, the province are pro-extremism. In KP as well, there's pockets. You could say that the population, very fringe elements, even population, are targeted by the terrorists. The people are not aware what they're doing, and in many cases, they don't even understand the kind of activity ultimately they end up aiding and abetting the terrorists. So I think the narrative is the only way forward. There is no other way. You can't control each and every social media platform. You shut it down and then you say, well, we have done the job. No, it is not the job. Ultimately, you need to create, the kind of very effective, very objective and very realistic narratives so that you can tell the people, the fringe elements, look, what you are doing, if you are betting, facilitating, or aiding the terrorist activities, these people are out to destroy the social fabric of the country. Religious scholars, they could be involved, even the mosque and the masjid, etc. So it could be a multi-pronged strategy. Otherwise, I think it's extremely difficult. It's not the danger which is posed by, which is being faced by Pakistan. This danger is being faced by every country in the world, including most advanced and developed democracies as well. Look what is happening in America. America is also being affected by the disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. And they know that they can't control it. Even the Ukraine war and previous American elections and upcoming American elections, all are being affected by the disinformation, misinformation, and the fake news. And ultimately, it hinges upon the government, federal and provincial, to create a very effective, very...
Come back to you, Javed. Syed Muhammad Ali, we talk about... Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We talk about, the root causes of radicalization. Of course, poverty is among them, marginalization, lack of social, economic opportunities, all of those. When we talk about, I think Dr. Tughral here mentioned that we perhaps need a revitalization of the National Action Plan. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's about, a lot of it is about implementation? Because when we go back to those original points, we haven't been able to implement all of them also, the way that the letter and the spirit of them. Do you think it's that, or do you think we need to perhaps look at new areas? Or even, those pointed out are something that we haven't unfortunately been able to address to the degree that we should have for the elimination of this kind of terrorism?
Mahrukh, I think it's a bit of all of that. But I agree with Dr. Brigadier Tughral that I think there is a need for consistent political commitment, consistent and comprehensive political commitment. National Action Plan is more than 10 years old, but the issue is, like he rightly mentioned, there are a lot of aspects which are critical to eliminating the causes of terrorism, because armed forces agencies and law enforcement agencies can carry out intelligence-based operations or kinetic operations which eradicate the consequences of terrorism. But the causes are mostly in the non-kinetic civilian domain. They are ideological, they are partly related to bad governance, they are partly related to misleading narratives spread through seminaries, through individuals.
But isn't it true that these narratives, when we talk about the root cause of it, isn't it a long-term process? I mean, if we talk about eradication, we talk about lack of opportunities, we talk about, unfortunately, our economic situation as far as Pakistan is concerned at this time. When we talk about for example, socio-economic lack of them, lack of socio-economic opportunities, these are issues that will take time. Pakistan can't become first world, or we can't become better economically in a heartbeat. So those issues will take time. In the meantime, perhaps choking the funding. If we talk about FATF, those issues, we talk about coming down on those that are spewing false narratives or using social media in that manner. Those measures are perhaps short-term measures. Would you agree with that? But are they, going to deal with the? Are they going to be effective to deal with terrorism? Then that's another question.
Mahrukh, my view is that there are some short-term, in fact, some immediately imperative steps. There are some short-term measures. There are some long-term measures. But the point is, even if they were long-term measures, they have some things which were quite simple, have not been done for the last 10 years. For example, there are over 15,000 religious seminaries which are still unregistered. Now, I mean, how much time and effort it takes? I mean, at the end of the day, what is a religious seminary? It is an NGO which is supposed to be working for charity or giving free education. So why it should not be registered? Why it should not be under the tax net? Why it should not be registered with NADRA, with SECP, with Societies Act? Why its accounts and funding must not be audited, as is the case with any other private limited company? I mean, these are the things. If any individual or entity or organization has a spiritual or productive cause at heart, I'm sure they will be free. They'll be willing to accept legal processes. They'll be willing to accept transparency and share the sources of money and the type of curriculum that they are teaching. It is very important. I think several governments have emphasized, but unfortunately, this needs to be implemented, that all the madrasa students can study religious studies. That is fine, but they need to be inculcated skills and opportunities which can allow them to earn their living and not resort to foreign funding or become an instrument of distortion of religion, and also develop their own hatred and grievance for lack of opportunity, and then spread it ideologically across the society within the youth. So that is something which requires a systemic review, that the madrasa system needs very deep substantive reforms. The curriculum needs to be reviewed, cleared by the state. It needs to be in line and consistent with our constitutional and legal obligations of all the citizens of Pakistan, irrespective of the school of thought that the seminary belongs to. The funding it receives, whether domestically or externally, needs to be reported, needs to be audited, and the madrasa needs to be recorded with the Societies Act, district administration. These are the three fundamental requirements, which does not take a lot of money, it does not take a lot of effort, it does not need a lot of.
So you've just I mean the question I was coming to is really, then why haven't we been able to do them? Is it because of a lack of a unified will? Is it because we have not been able to come on one page as a nation on these issues? Is that the reason, in your opinion, that we haven't been able to take these simple steps that you are saying don't require a lot of funding? They just require will, right?
Reasons. One is consistency of political commitment. The second is I think the coordination between federation, state and provincial governments. These two things are required. Right now, we have already discussed that KPK government does not seem to be as forthcoming or committed towards countering terrorism through administrative measures. They have been.
I'm going to interrupt you on that and go to Javed Saab. I'll come back to you. I want to ask him to elucidate on this very point. Javed Saab, do you think it's because, it's because of the political, when there's a different government in KP, we know that. Of course, it comprises of a party that is in opposition in the center. Do you think it's the political dynamics that are dictating, their lack of will here rather than anything else?
I think you raised a very important dimension, that if poverty is not cured, that means we are not going to control extremism and terrorism, because 45% of the population is poor in Pakistan. I think, in my personal opinion, that 3 or 4, because I differ with the argument that if poverty.
So if KP is concerned, what Syed Muhammad Ali is saying, he's saying, and it's a fact, we've seen their lack of support in this. Do you think it has to do with the fact that they are in opposition in the federation? It has to do with where they are politically, and that is dictating their stance on this very important national issue?
Let me put my arguments out. I think, in my opinion, there are 3 very important reasons or causes which are contributing in terrorism. Number one problem is Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is being used as a safe haven. Most of the terror activities are being planned over there, funded over there, and the weapons, state-of-the-art weapons, are being provided to the terrorists. And those weapons are left behind by the Americans, including night vision goggles and the assault rifles and rocket launchers, etc. And number two, the second most important factor is Indian involvement. Funding, logistics, and intel is being provided to the terrorists who are being based in Afghanistan. They cross over into Pakistan, carry out the terror activities. Some are killed, and rest are, they flee back to Afghanistan. Until and unless we resolve this particular issue, we are not going to address the issue of terrorism. Maybe we can use as a last resort the option of the hot pursuit as well. Under international laws, we can go for that option. We are exercising restraint, a complete restraint. Maybe we carried out 1 or 2 operations inside of one territory, but I think we can invoke that particular provision and article of the United Nations, where we can go after the terrorists, hit them over there, hit them hard, eliminate them. second most important, the aspect is there's a combo of three right now. It's not only one terror organization. It is the TTP, the ISIS, and Al Qaeda. We've seen recent examples where one of the important figures of Al Qaeda is in Lahore. When they're combined, I think they're posing a more serious threat to the country right now. It's not the population of Pakistan. It is not the madrasa, not the mosque, not the issue of poverty. These are all mostly, I'm talking about several factors. Indian factor, Afghan territory, and then you can talk about the cooperation and collaboration between these services and the service government. Then there's the NACTA as well. Why are we reorganizing, integrating, and this particular organization providing its funds and human resources as well? I think the answer lies in this new approach, new campaign, because
Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Tughral Yamin, thank you for joining us today. Syed Muhammad Ali, thank you for your time. Javed, Jadoon Saab, thank you for being with us today on this very important topic. Of course, as far as curbing terrorism is concerned, it's not just one issue. For us, it's a multi-pronged strategy that needs to be in place. And of course, the state of Pakistan can and will not tolerate any terrorism. As far as all provinces being on one page is concerned, certainly that is essential. Political will is essential. All provinces coming together with the federation on this very, very important issue is essential to curbing this kind of terrorism, every kind of terrorism. When we talk about terrorism, we talk about extremism, we talk about radicalization, all of those issues, and dealing with the root causes that will eliminate these causes of terrorism is going to be that kind of political will, and all political parties, all provinces coming together to deal with this. Let's hope that we can do that, and let's hope that we can curb any and all forms of terrorism from Pakistan. Thank you so much for joining us today.